In January, just weeks after the Newtown shooting, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office responded to a call to the home of Greg and Sarah Griego and their youngest 4 children. The story is well known now that deputies say 15-year-old Nehemiah Griego shot and killed his parents and 3 siblings. The reaction from Nehemiah's remaining family members surprised some. They're asking for a second chance for the teen. Here's NMIF producer Matt Grubbs with Greg Griego's brother and sister, Eric and Regina Griego.
Well, Eric and Regina Griego, thanks for coming in and bringing in your sister as well, Louisa Hood. Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time. One of the first things I want to address is when we spoke about coming in and talking, you said, Eric, for you and for the rest of you, this isn't a gun issue. Just tell me why.
Well, you know, obviously guns clearly were part of this this tragedy, of course. I mean, but what we've been trying to come to terms with is the sort of the mental health elements. None of us really saw this coming, and we've been trying to learn about what exactly was happening within our nephew's mental health status. You know, what maybe we could have been looking for, should have been looking for. What should any family be aware of? And so, I mean, clearly there were weapons involved, and that's a different conversation. And we've not spent a lot of time talking about that. We've really tried. What we're really dealing with now as a family, and hopefully we'll deal with this as a community, is what are we doing to prevent this from happening by trying to figure out sooner and to determine more thoroughly what kids are going through. And if we all thought, you know, Nehemiah our nephew was a seemingly normal kid, you know, with the same challenges any adolescent had, and maybe, you know, no one had any idea this is happening. And that's typically the case in these you know, these kind of tragedies, is nobody really sees it coming. And so that's what we've been focused on. I mean, rather than get into, you know, how many, what kind, whether they were locked up, should they have been locked up. I mean, that's certainly a debate that we all have our own views on, right? But I think central to this conversation really is what was happening in this little kid's life. And he was a kid. He's a 15-year-old, very young 15-year-old kid.
Well, and you said that your brother had his reasons, and he had that debate himself. You know, okay, so do I teach Nehemiah about these? And he did. And I guess you sort of move on from there.
Yeah. I think he would have made different decisions had he seen any signs in Nehemiah, you know.
Well, let's start with that. As we've been speaking, you know, it has to be the most human reaction to start asking, okay, why did this happen? And looking back on it, could I see something? And where do you go with that?
Well, our interaction with Nehemiah was at least monthly. We have a large family. We would see him in family events. We would celebrate birthdays. Greg was at my house for his birthday on December 8th. We had a Christmas gathering. We were going to meet that January for his birthday and his wife and Sarah's birthday. We did not see anything that seemed unusual as a family. He is homeschooled. And my understanding from your panel is that a lot of screening or a lot of those kinds of things are picked up by a lot of times the educational system. And so that may have been, you know, a gap. We honestly keep scratching our head. I raised 3 children. There were, you know, I mean, in my son, there were, you know, times where I looked at his journal to make sure he was okay and things like that. But there is nothing that we saw in Nehemiah that would indicate the severity of what happened.
Louisa, you spent some time just watching the panel that we just had on with Gene and the mental health professionals. One of the things that they said was behavior that might be considered problematic or worrisome or something you would want to address oftentimes starts to manifest itself around 14.
Yes.
And I think when we in the public look at something like this, we think, you know, what could we have done to see this coming? And if you consider that maybe this started to manifest itself at 14, maybe not, that doesn't give you much time.
No, it doesn't. And in actuality, I think if he did start manifesting things, we did not see it. We did not pick it up. Whether, you know, we had enough experience to do it or not. I have had some experience with taking care of adolescent children, but honestly, I never saw anything except for he was a 15-year-old boy. you know, very energetic. He kind of a little bit more withdrawn, but, you know, we have a big family, so within the family, you know, environment, he talked when he was talked to. Had a very good conversation with my husband, who is in the military, very, you know, excited about things. We were trying to talk him into go to the Coast Guard instead of the Army. You know, I have 2 daughters that are in the Coast Guard. They love it, and no, never saw it. I was exacerbated when I got the news, just shocked.
Oh, sure. Eric, you had said that on a personal level, you start to ask why or how could I have noticed, but that's also sort of something that we go to as a society or as a community. To make this more about Albuquerque and New Mexico, we look at something like this, and you said that your experience has been we immediately start looking for that one thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we're all learning, I mean, obviously, as a family, I mean, this is so difficult for us to just wrap our brains around. I mean, but as we are learning that it is, as the expert, your panel mentioned, you know, that there are so many factors. You know, central to those factors is the state of a young kid, in this case, is mental health, right? But there are many, many factors. You know, they mentioned, you know, early. You know, could there have been an early brain trauma that we don't know about, or you know, or could he have fallen? You know, could there have been some early signs of a severe mental illness that, again, that hadn't really started manifesting themselves, where the family would have picked it up? You know, the other thing is, even though we did see him fairly regularly, he was very involved in his faith, in his church community. This is this is a family that really, their community outside of this family was really the church, and there are many, many folks there. I mean, this is a huge congregation that interacted with them, and we've heard from many, many of them. It's the same thing that we saw, and some of them saw more than we did because he was there in the music ministry, and he was there. They said, you know, this is a kid who was passionate about music, who was, you know, who was a pretty good athlete, who liked to, you know, same kind of thing young boys liked. He was skateboarding and he was playing basketball, and he was a great musician. So certainly nobody thought that he was sort of developmentally delayed or anything, because he really, so. It's not only baffling to his immediate family and his aunts and uncles and cousins, but to the literally hundreds of people who saw him weekly, you know, because he was very involved in the ministry over there. So I think that as a society, we all scratch our heads, like, you know, how does this happen? And I think the panel did raise some very, very valid questions that we have to ask ourselves as a community. Are we doing enough to screen for this? Are we doing enough to destigmatize it, right? I mean, to say that, look, you know, it shouldn't be a source of shame and embarrassment if there are some issues in your family. And I think that was a very valid point they made. You know, we've learned a lot about adolescent mental health. I've probably learned more about it in the last 30 days than I have in my whole life.
I bet. And we have this tendency, I think, to say so-and-so is mentally ill, as opposed to suffering from a mental illness, that it's an affliction. And we're seeing that maybe even today as we talk, the president has talked about bringing some sort of parity to mental health when the ACA or Obamacare goes into effect in its full measure. Are we afraid to take a closer look at this, do you think?
Well, and this is something that I've had discussions with many people on, is that we're okay with, you know, kidney failure or something associated with the kidney, the heart. People are really reluctant to think of the brain as an organ that could potentially have issues. Somehow that throws our society off, you know, and that concerns me. And getting back to the notion of screening, I don't know that parents are taught that this potentially could happen and are trained to screen. I mean, when I thought about it, I says, you know, he didn't, you know, kick dogs or, you know, throw rocks at cats or do any kind of, nothing like that. He was
what
a
you
very
would consider the obvious thing.
right. He cried. He cried, so it's not like he was emotionally unaffected. There's nothing that told us that, but there might have been something that we didn't understand about mental illness, and so I was never trained by my physician to look for these kind of characteristics in your child, and this is when you should be alarmed. Or, you know, I had all the little flow charts on what to do when they had particular fevers or things like that, but they don't do anything around mental illness.
Right. Louisa, is there?
And I think, and the stigmatism that goes along with that is also results in bad things, and then is sensationalized, and that scares people. You know, when you see someone that has killed, like with us, 5 members of our family, right away you want to make them out to be a bad person, because how can a normal person, how can anyone with any kind of sanity that could be walking around like that when you do something like that? And it's fear. And unfortunately, I do think that that is encouraged, the sensationalism of it. And it doesn't help the issue, and it doesn't hit what we need to be talking about in resources, early indication and indicators, and, you know, helping people, like my sister said, who are not walking around with kidney failure, but they do have a condition that needs to be addressed, and addressed seriously.
And you talk about this fear that if we can identify something or say, well, clearly this was a schizophrenia issue or something like that, then we can say, at least it won't happen to me.
Exactly.
Which is the exact opposite of what you found, it sounds like.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Well, I think that if there, you know, we keep hoping that something good will come of this, and we hope that there will be a greater awareness that mental health issues are real, and they exist in every family, and that that doesn't mean everybody has mental illness in a family, but that we as a society need to be giving it the kind of parity with, as you mentioned, with the rest of healthcare, and as a community and as citizens, as taxpayers, you know, do we think it's important enough? You know, the physicians mentioned that, you know, the great majority of people with mental health issues and mental illness kill themselves first. This is actually an anomaly. This is a rare case. What happened to us? Obviously, certainly no one in our family ever in our wildest dreams could have thought of anything like this. And who does? But if we can sort of, as a family, say, this is an illness, we hope that our nephew will be able to recover from it. We hope he will be given the opportunity to recover from it and the access to care to recover from it. Right now, all of those are in question. Is there even access? Is our justice system so biased toward punitive measures that even for a 15-year-old kid whose family is overwhelmingly say, this is not who we knew, is there going to be an opportunity for him to get the care that he needs to hopefully rebuild whatever's left of his life at whatever age? And so I think I hold out hope that some good will come from this, as hard as it is, incredibly devastating as for our family. We hope so.
You said that there's a real difficulty for you dealing with this because you would like to get to that step, but it's a court case right now. Mm-hmm. And that every meeting with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, someone who could talk and maybe dig into this a little bit, that's evidence.
Right.
And what do you do with that?
I know. And Nehemiah, even now, when I visit him, he seems to be a normal kid, you know. But the problem is where he is right now, he cannot receive true treatment. If any symptoms like flashbacks and stuff, they basically have to suppress that kind of, you know, potential for getting through and diagnosing properly and treating properly. So we're hoping that he'll get to a mental health facility, certainly one that has security, but for sure, my greatest fear is that he might hurt himself where he's at.
And we understand that public safety is important, and none of us, we want to make sure that he's capable of being hopefully someday out in society again, but that he's able to do that in a way that is safe for himself and safe for the community and the family. I mean, nobody wants him to be sort of put out there and putting anybody in danger. However, I think the bias in our system very much, even for adolescents, even for kids, is on the punishment, is on the the sort of accountability, even for someone whose brain was probably not fully developed, that we know was not fully developed, but certainly also may have had some serious mental health issues going on. So we're just hoping that we will learn from this, and that we will try to address the real problem, which is what went wrong in a 15-year-old kid's life that was seemingly normal from a pretty good family. I mean, we're not a perfect family, like no family is, and so we're hoping that hopefully, again, that is something that will come of this, we hope.
Well, Eric, Regina, Louisa, we really thank you for coming in and spending just a few minutes. We know that your road is much longer, but thanks for making us stop.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.